Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, as you all know, on both the Assembly and the Senate side, we passed what we believed was a very responsible package of revenue and cuts that will take us out of the immediate cash crisis. We also passed an economic stimulus package, along with $18 billion in cuts in revenue. And in terms of economic stimulus, you can see a number of jobs that will be created from the package that we voted on. On a day when California's unemployment rate jumped to 8.4%, it's important to remember that the package we passed will create over 300,000 new jobs, not to mention help reassure Wall Street so other bond-funded projects can hopefully move forward and not add all those jobs to the unemployment rate. Not only will these projects keep people and goods moving, they will create thousands of good construction jobs. Did we gut CEQA? No. Communities trying to keep their air and water free from contamination aren't the problem. The recession is. However, we did meet the governor more than halfway by easing CEQA rules for transportation projects and surplus state property. And we make it easier for hospitals to move forward with expansion and construction. All of these efforts also create jobs. For the governor to oppose these new jobs and the cash and the budget fixes because, as he said, it isn't exactly as he originally proposed is mind-boggling, especially given today's unemployment numbers. It's like a child telling Santa, if you don't bring every single item on my list, then stay out of my chimney. I am hoping that the governor over these next couple of days will really reconsider saying that he will veto the budget. In fact, he had his press conference saying that just within minutes after we adjourned. And so it's my hope that after careful consideration and after he actually reads what we sent him, that he will realize that we met him more than halfway. Our original proposal included revenue and cuts. He asked for economic stimulus, and we feel that we addressed that appropriately. Thank you very much, Senator Steinberg. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and make a few comments, and then I'll introduce Treasurer Lockyer, who you all know, who I think maybe has the most pertinent information to present here today. You know, my way or the highway doesn't solve the problem. We took the first step yesterday to solve California's fiscal and economic crisis. $18 billion worth of real solutions, including $7.3 billion worth of cuts. It's essential that the markets see that we're solving our budget problem. And our plan began, emphasis on began, to accomplish that. During his press conference yesterday, I always look for the silver lining here, right? It wasn't all that much fun to watch the governor yesterday, but the silver lining is he did essentially agree with our innovative approach to increase the state's revenues. But he also said that we failed to send him an economic stimulus package that met his criteria to his satisfaction. It's simply not true. The chart indicates that the legislature's private-public partnership CEQA reform bill itself would authorize projects worth $14 billion and create about 259,000 jobs. We also added $3 billion in accelerated infrastructure bond projects. That's separate from the prior point. $3 billion that will create an additional 54,000 jobs. The new transportation fee, separate from the prior 2 points, will fund $3 billion in transportation projects, creating another 54,000 jobs. We all agree that the economy is the problem we need to fix, that we must be about high-wage job creation. But as the Treasurer said yesterday, that begins with reducing California's budget deficit. So in the big picture, I've been involved in a lot of negotiations. I know that it's sometimes that the best deals, the best agreements, the biggest accomplishments often have to break apart 2 or 3 times before they finally come together. The Speaker and I are committed to staying here, to sitting down with the governor as soon as possible to take the private-public partnership design bills that we presented, the language he wants, to have our technical staff to sit down together and go through line by line, attempt to reconcile the difference, and send California on a positive path towards resolving this budget crisis. Very happy here to have our State Treasurer, Bill Lockyer. Bill?
Well, in law school, I remember one professor informing me that the legal definition of volunteer is officious intermeddler. I feel a little bit like that, although as the state's banker, I feel compelled to just comment on the current situation and what hopefully can occur to move us forward. I think Speaker Bass and Pro Tem Steinberg have done an excellent job representing their caucuses, important interests that voters care about, and their philosophies. They've moved a lot. And I think perhaps there's not an understanding of how far they've moved with respect to the concessions made thus far. If there's any, I guess, well, the governor should also get credit for having moved a lot from his historic views about taxes and other matters. So a lot of movement there. I guess to the extent that the one group that hasn't been willing to offend their core constituency is those that respond to the Howard Jarvis organization and perspectives about taxes, that no movement there, no political risk there. All the political risk is with Governor Schwarzenegger and the Democrats. Just as one who watches these sort of dynamics, it's disappointing. But my job now is to at least say that they're too close to a deal to walk away now. And I know it's going to require some continued difficult negotiations and unhappy results for some or all, but to walk away now would mean that we can't even make substantial progress with majority vote tactics. And the infrastructure accelerations that people would hope for aren't going to happen if we don't make some steps. Those jobs in those private sector funds aren't going to flow if we can't borrow. If we can't borrow, those projects continue to shut down, thousands of them all over the state, and the accelerations people would hope for to create jobs and stimulate the economy are gone. So the budget is a necessary first step. We can't get back into the bond market now. And so there's the cash flow issue of paying the bills come February, and there's the investment in our future that we want to make through the bonds that people have adopted. So the various things that have occurred, the discussions of CEQA and labor policy and so on, frankly, aren't going to make any difference in the short term. Maybe they do eventually, but they aren't going to fix the problem we have that occurs in February and so on. So we've got to move forward, and I think the failure to enact the tax provisions or some very close version of those. I know there may be arguments about specific details that could still get resolved, but the failure to move forward with respect to those cuts and taxes would be a terrible mistake. So I just urge everyone, first compliment the leaders in terms of their efforts, but urge everyone to keep at it. It's not the time to shut down. So I'll respond after they do to any other questions.
Mr. Treasurer, what should Wall Street take away from the governor's veto?
Hasn't vetoed yet, by the way.
It's vetoed.
I guess they haven't gone down yet, right?
They have not.
No.
Yeah.
Kennedy learned when you get two different messages from the Kremlin. You ignore one and respond to the other, you know,
Right.
so, yeah. You got multiple messages from the governor yesterday, I think, and so respond to the ones you find are constructive. I think right now Wall Street is believing that California is not a place you should invest in. And until these things get fixed, investors are going to stay away. So, and it really requires a long-term fix. You know, what I worry about, this is a very, very good and promising first step, if all these were enacted, but it's not going to be sufficient. It's necessary, but not sufficient to be able to go back to the bond markets. And I think everyone realistically understands. This isn't going to make infrastructure investment happen, even if it were adopted. But it does mean there's a willingness to make the kind of important decisions that are hard on both sides to get things straight.
Senator, the governor said today, first of all, he reiterated he's going to veto your bill if you send him to it, and down to Fresno. And he also said he was going to call a new special session to get you back here. Do you intend to bring the legislature back before January 5th?
Well, if there's an agreement, absolutely.
If there's no agreement?
There's no agreement. I'm going to be here. The speaker's going to be here. We're going to be working through the holidays, trying to work out the remaining differences with the administration. And as soon as that is done, we'll bring all of our colleagues back.
Can you comment on just talk that the administration now is considering furloughing state workers or perhaps even layoffs at this point?
Well, first of all, in terms of the Assembly, I'll be happy to bring the Assembly back as soon as their agreement, just as Senator Steinberg said. I certainly hope that the governor does not take that action and that he, number one, finishes the collective bargaining that is going on with the state workers before he would take an action like that. And if he signs, you know, our budget, I'm still hopeful that he'll reconsider and sign, that at least it gets us out of the cash crisis. He can continue negotiating.
Key point on the state employee issue, and again, I represent probably more state employees than any other member. The package of cuts we put forward yesterday include over $500 million worth of cuts to the state employee workforce. Nobody is taking the state workers off the table here. All we have said is that the parties ought to be able to work it out. Now, again, this is an item of discussion with the governor. We'll sit down and talk to the governor about these issues. I think the treasurer is right. We're far too close to let this $18 billion opportunity slip. And so we look forward to talking to him soon.
During the negotiations you already had with the governor, did he insist that you be specific about the cuts for state employees? Because he says that that's what he did. He wanted you to take the heat for it.
He said he wanted us to take the heat for it?
Not in those words, but he wanted us to
Last I checked, it was the governor and the unions that are doing the negotiations, so, you know, us taking the heat or something.
Well, I'll just put, we did not draw any hard lines in the sand. When we didn't have an ironclad agreement, we put forward the best proposal that we thought was right for the people of California. And I want to talk about heat, because we're not afraid of taking any heat here. We're already taking heat. We're cutting billions of dollars in public education spending. We're eliminating cost of living increases for Social Security disability recipients. We're cutting regional center payments by 3%. We're not afraid to take heat here. We want to solve the problem. But as the treasurer said, and the speaker said, the problem is the $41 billion deficit. And we have an $18 billion solution. There is no other credible solution on the table.
Let me also say that in terms of taking the heat, we certainly have taken the heat for the budget overall, because since we did not get any Republican votes for revenue, we came up with a way to pass a budget without their support. But I would just say, too, and Senator Steinberg said it a minute ago, in the package of cuts that we put forward, there is a dollar amount close to $500 million that we said the governor should go back to the table and negotiate with the state workers. And so trying to pass off his responsibility onto us because he doesn't want to take the heat for that, that's not acceptable.
talk a little bit about the strategy of holding the bills. Is your idea that you'll work out a deal with him
It takes a few days before the bills technically are ready to go down, and we certainly hope that we could come to some type of deal so that he won't. No, we didn't say we were holding them for 12 days at all.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking, though. Would you hold them until you work out a deal with him, then send him the package and sign it?
Well, I think that's what we have to figure out. We've not made
I
any
mean,
decision on that.
that would be the best, that would be the best course, but we have to sit, we want to sit down with the governor as soon as possible. Again, I want to reiterate this, because sometimes these issues are 30,000 feet above, right? There's a lot of detail to this public-private partnership design build. It's a valid concept. We're willing to embrace it. But we want to sit down with our bills, his technical experts, our technical experts, and work through the actual substance of this. That's the way you resolve the impasse.
Or do you continuously refer to the Democrats and the governor, or you leave out the Republican contingency?
No, we would like to include the Republican contingency, and hopefully if the governor comes back with a proposal, he'll bring a couple of Republican votes along.
It sounds to me like though you now see, and perhaps you've always seen, as these are bilateral negotiations with the government. They're not
In the short term, the prize is $18 billion off the state's budget deficit, and that's where we are focused like a laser.
And that is between the Democrats and the governor.
So you're not planning on including the Republicans in these negotiations that you're having now with the governor?
Over the next couple of days,
They're welcome to participate in any way that they would want, but really, we've got to get the $18 billion solution within days. That's the goal.
Mr. Lockyer, speaking of that, if you could step up, please. You speak from the investment community perspective a lot. This $18 billion includes legally suspect tax increases. How do you think the investment community will respond to something that could collapse as soon as it's done?
Well, it's good to have the issues resolved quickly. I know people, I ran the largest law firm in the state of California, and always asked, why is it when I have 4 lawyers, I have at least 7 opinions in the room? So there's going to be either lawyers or politically motivated commentators that are going to claim it's constitutional or not constitutional or whatever, and ultimately, there's only one way to get those debates settled. For years and years and years, I've been of the belief that's been expressed by the leaders that bills that both increase and decrease revenues in the same measure, there's some technicalities about that, but those are constitutional, that comports with the Constitution. Some may not like that tactic or whatever, but I think that's legally sound.
But do you think the investment community is going to be on board with that?
Well, I think they want to see the final result. Are we paying our bills, and is there a genuinely balanced budget being adopted that addresses long-term budget stability? So that's what they want. And, they're basically not, institutional investors are not investing in California now. When we went to markets recently, we had to basically pull the measure back because they weren't buying it. And I think expect to see these matters addressed before they'll be willing to take some risk.
Given the stakes involved, is there a process, Mr. Lockyer, to expedite these legal questions to the state Supreme Court?
Yes.
Are you expecting to do that? And would the Democrats and the governor be willing to do that on a voluntary basis?
Well, you'd have to ask them,
Sure.
but there is
Sure.
a method.
There is a process to go.
Clarity is important, absolutely.
did
Absolutely.
you mention your previous legal opinions?
Excuse me, yeah, I need to emphasize again, 2 things. Number one, I know this is arcane inside stuff, but the Legislative Council keyed the bill's majority vote based on their legal opinion, which I'm happy to produce for any of you, which said just what the treasurer said. In a single measure, if you increase a tax and lower a tax, so long as it's revenue neutral, it's majority vote, because the Constitution says that the 2/3 applies if you're putting a measure forward, quote, for the purpose of increasing revenue. And so call it what you want. It's legal, and we're governing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.